When I first heard about smartwatches, they sounded like the best thing ever. I mean, imagine having a smartphone, but on your wrist. But reality is often disappointing. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how smartwatches changed my life, but also some of the biggest issues with modern smartwatches. Then we're going to compare them to both regular wristwatches and to other fitness trackers that don't look like a smartwatch. Let's take a brief look at the history of the smartwatch. Back in the day, technology was nowhere near as advanced as it is today. When it came to smartwatches, if you could even call them smart, most of them only had just one function besides telling time. For example, if we go back to the 80s, you've got things like the Seiko Data 2000, which allowed you to type some notes and store them on your watch. Or something like the Seiko TV, where you could connect it to a special device that allowed you to view television on your wrist. However, the downsides is that not only was the technology bad, but it was also really big, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a watch, which is to be portable. Then later on, Fossil came up with a really cool idea, a wrist-based PDA. So not only could you download apps on this thing, but you could even play games, which you could transfer over from your Windows XP laptop. I'd say this is the closest we could get to a modern smartwatch. But when it comes to having modern style smartwatches, those only started to show up in the early 2010s. For example, you had something like the Sony smartwatch, which was based on Android. There were some apps you could download like Facebook and Twitter, and you could even get your notifications from your phone sent over to the watch, so you didn't have to pick up your phone to view them. But I think in 2015, that's when companies started to take smartwatches more seriously. That's of course when the Apple Watch launched. I mean, it seems to be a common industry thing where only once Apple does it, does everyone else take it seriously. I mean, look at the AirPods, for example. When I was a kid, I used to daydream about the future. And one of the things I used to dream about was what a smartwatch could look like. So for me, these were three things that I wanted to have in a smartwatch. First of all, it would have to be independent. So basically, it's like a phone on your wrist and you don't need to connect it to any external devices in order for it to work. The second thing is that it had to have app support, so you could download a whole bunch of extra apps to do other stuff on. And the third thing was to be able to take calls. Now, of course, modern smartwatches can take calls, but the one thing I wanted was to have video calls on the watch. I mean, it's kind of unnecessary, but I thought it was cool. So if we compare my childhood dream to the state of modern smartwatches, how close have we gotten? Unfortunately, modern smartwatches still do require a connection to a smartphone in order to work. But here are some of my favorite features about modern smartwatches. So first of all, it's the alarm feature. I've tried a couple of different smartwatch brands, including Xiaomi, Garmin, and Samsung. And so far, the Samsung has given me the best alarms. So not only do you get some really strong vibrations from this thing, but you even get sound. So it's basically impossible to miss your alarms, which is important for someone like me who sets like 15 alarms because I know I'm going to sleep through all of them. You can also get your notifications from your phone onto your watch. And this has been one of the best things that I've experienced from having a smartwatch. Instead of picking up my phone and then finding myself 5 minutes deep into a TikTok session, with a smartwatch, I just left my wrist, I see the message, and in most cases, it's not important enough for me to have to pick up my phone to respond. So it actually makes me less distracted. So on Samsung, there is a built-in to-do list app called Reminders. And if you set your reminders on your phone, they will automatically transfer over to your watch. It makes it less likely for you to get any important tasks that you had planned on doing. And coming back to the notifications, one of the notifications that you often look out for is two-factor authentication codes. So now, instead of having to pick up your phone to find the code, you just check your wrist, it's right there. It's so much faster and convenient. Now, this next feature is something I honestly don't use that often, but many people, like my parents, always use it. It's the Find My Phone feature. So just pick up your wrist, tap a button, and your phone starts to ring wherever it is. It makes it so much more convenient to find your phone if you happen to have lost it somewhere. Now, the final feature has to be the flashlight. What you can do on the Samsung watch is turn the screen into a flashlight so you can see in the dark, and it's actually a nice thing to use if you happen to not have your phone nearby. So, smartwatches are good and everyone should buy one, right? There are some big issues with modern smartwatches, and I'm going to talk about around 4 or 5 of them. The first one, of course, being battery life. Have you ever tried to use a smartwatch that's powered by Wear OS or an Apple Watch? The battery life is just horrendous. For example, my Galaxy Watch, with all of the features turned on like they would be when you first set up the device, the thing only lasts like 16 hours, which is basically nothing. And so you'll be stuck charging this thing once or twice a day if you need to use the sleep tracking as well. However, with dumber smartwatches like the Garmin's, you do find that the battery life can be a lot longer, sometimes up to 7 days, sometimes even like 2 months. And let's say you like the fitness tracking features of smartwatches. You also like the notifications you get, but you don't want to deal with the headache of battery life. What else should you consider? First of all, you could consider the Garmin's. Garmin watches are pretty solid. You get notifications. Some of the watches even support Spotify and podcasts, which you can download directly on the device. And they have much better GPSs and much more accurate fitness tracking compared to the Samsung. Some of these watches cost the same as an Apple Watch, some are cheaper, and some are really, really expensive. But those ones are for those who need like a month-long battery life. Or let's say you want to wear a regular wristwatch but still get fitness tracking. Well, there are 2 things to consider. You could get yourself an Oura ring, or you could get a Whoop strap. Now, the nice thing about the Whoop strap is you don't just have to wear it on your wrist. You can also wear it on your upper arm to keep it out of sight. But the downside has to be the fact that it's an annual subscription, and so you never actually own the strap. Compared to a regular watch, smartwatches have all of these amazing features. However, they come at a cost. First of all, these devices are basically glued together, and so that means that repairs are impossible. In fact, if you've ever done a warranty claim on a watch, quite often they'll just swap your device for a completely new one. And next is battery degradation. This is a big issue because many of these smartwatches need to be charged pretty much every day. That means the batteries go through a lot of charge cycles, meaning they wear down quite quickly. And so sooner than you think, you have to find yourself replacing the battery. Another issue is the fact that they get outdated in quite a short period of time. The biggest reason why is because these companies don't want to support the older devices because they want to get you to upgrade and spend more money.